I'm absolutely struck by this stride comes before sprint thing, and I'm remembering back to cross country where they say we're going to do a stride workout at the end of a run. We get back to the track at school and you do some strides, and I'm just chuckling to myself because I always would tell myself in subsequent years, okay, I'm going to sprint, but I'm going to sprint at 50% of my all-out speed.
Yeah.
So I always think of all-out speed for me as somebody's chasing me with a syringe filled with poison.
Okay.
And I've got to get away. Okay. That's all-out speed. I don't want to die. So 50% of that, 60, 70, it's and I'm measuring it subjectively. I'm not doing this by heart rates or anything like that. And indeed, anytime I've done 100% all out, like in my mind, imagining, someone trying to really take my life and I'm running all out, I end up with this lower back thing because of you get hurt.
Yeah.
But striding sounds like something that people could work up to. How do you know after doing the skip workout that you described that you're quote unquote ready to stride and start doing a stride workout? And I should mention that these workouts, because we did one yesterday, you finish them feeling great. This is an aspect of exercise that I think most people don't talk about, unfortunately, that this leave it all on the mat, you take every set to failure in the gym, or these long runs where you're just shredded, they're not great for teaching people how to be healthy because people are exhausted afterwards, they're tired, they overtrain quickly. And then people say there's no such thing as overtraining. It's like, yeah, if you can sleep all day, eat all day, and your profession is to do this, but there is such a thing as having a stressful life and wanting to be healthy and exercising and trying to incorporate that in a way that feeds the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think these workouts that we did, the workout we did yesterday, left me feeling posturally, energetically, mood-wise, just feeling great. I slept great last night, felt great this morning. Had a great workout in the gym, as I mentioned earlier. So I want to encourage people to give this a try. And in doing that, I want to give them a roadmap. So a warm-up of 10 to 15 minutes, 50-meter or so skip. Could they do it on lawn, dirt, or concrete? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't.
Great.
Yeah. If
Great.
you've got a really flat grass, perfect.
Okay.
But if you don't and do it on concrete, no problem.
Okay. So basically no cost to this except a little bit of time and attention. 10 to 15 of those, 50 meters out, walk back, repeat after a warm-up.
And if you need a little bit longer recovery than the probably 90 seconds it takes to walk back, take it. Okay. Not a big deal. The quality here is a determining factor. As you said, you're not trying to get really fatigued from plyometric work. This is a plyometric session. You want to be kind of fresh going into each one. And that's going to take, for most people, doing a maximal skip over the course of 50 meters, it's 90 seconds is about enough. But if you're really explosive and you're a really good skipper, it might be 3 minutes. That's fine. As you said, you want to feel good at the end of that. You don't want to be beasted at the end of that. Now, if you can do it where if we transition, say, from the skips, and you can stride really well, and if you can stride really well, maybe you can sprint really well. That doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be tired at the end of the session. But the quality of the movement has to be the governor there, not the capacity. Not, I got to get the work done, and I don't care how that work looks or what it looks like. I just got to get it done. No, with high intense work, with sprint work, your governor is always the quality of the work. What does it look like? What does it feel like?
So it's a lot like resistance training in that way.
100%.
Always quality. So how does one transition into striding, and what does that look like? This is saying, okay, I'm gonna sprint, but it's not a sprint because I'm gonna hold back a bit. But how do you hold back and still have the expressive part? Because the expressive part is a little hard to describe in words, but yesterday you were encouraging Rob and I to get us, tall with our posture as if we were being pulled up by a string from our heads. And it has a profound psychological effect. And then you just feel your body opening up in natural movement. You don't have to think about coordinating the hand lift. It just, you're in, like this full bowing out. Yeah. It's really wonderful.
If we describe the difference between all of the gait patterns, just through the amount of space that you take up on the planet. So when you walk, it's a small space. And when you jog, you're taking up a little bit more space. And when you run, it's a bit more space. When you start to stride, it's more space again. And then when you sprint, you're up here and you're being maximally expressive. So just think about it from that perspective. The other part is jogging and running typically happens behind your center of mass. You crash onto the ground and you push back. You have this propulsive phase. There's not a lot of a braking phase here. There's a long propulsive phase that happens with the foot pushing back behind the center mass. Striding and sprinting happens in front of the center mass. There's actually a longer eccentric phase where you drive a lot of force into the ground. It's in front of the center mass, and then you propel yourself off. And it's a very short propulsive phase. So think about it that way. So it's a bigger shape, and it's primarily more in front. And it's also, as I said, and this is important, you can't sprint. And most of the people that are listening to this cannot sprint.
Are you telling us to not sprint?
No. What I'm saying is you do not have that strategy available to you. Most of us, like everybody who's listening to this, almost everybody will be able to walk. And if you can walk, as you said, you could probably jog. And most of the people on the planet can walk, jog, and maybe they can run. Most people on the planet can't stride. They can't get any faster than 75% of what their capacity is because they just can't do that anymore. If you're a kid, you can do that. You can run, you can stride along all day. But you get to a certain point where our tissues and our joint systems, and we just do not have the capacity to run that fast safely. And we definitely don't have it when we're sprinting. And the difference here is when you're striding, it's essentially a pretty simple, traditional spring mass system. The body acts as a spring. Just whether it's 50% on the front side, 50% on the back side, you hit and you bounce off. You hit and you bounce off. Where sprinting is a little bit different. This is the work of Dr. Ken Clark, who's a good friend of mine. That he published this, I think, in 2018, 19. It's called a two-mass system, where it's not, the body is not acting as a spring. There's a secondary mass of the shank and the foot that's contributing to up to about 8% of the total force through contact. So this elite sprinter is hitting the ground so hard that so there's another mass that's added to the spring. And that's what I'm saying. That's not available to you because you can't move your limbs fast enough. And you don't have the range of motion that's big enough to be able to get that sort of velocity. There's a dozen players in the NFL that can do that. Every elite sprinter is actually a sprinter. Most every other athlete in most every other sport can't actually sprint. They're operating as spring mass. They don't have that secondary mass because they can't move their limbs fast enough.
When Dr. Peter Attia was on this podcast and elsewhere, he talked about one of the major causes of death, mostly in older people, is they'll fall, they'll be mobile, they'll catch some sort of infection related to contact with the bed or post-surgical lack of circulation, and that's what takes them out. I was shocked to learn this, right? I mean, I thought it would be heart attack or cerebrovascular disease or that instead. But that led to this whole notion that I think is gaining more popularity nowadays, that part of longevity is maintaining things like grip strength, one's ability to jump and land, and jumping and landing is eccentric control.
Yeah.
My mom's turning 80 this year, and she's fortunately in very good health.
Great.
My dad's already 80. He was on this podcast, and for anyone that saw that, he's clearly in very good health. But I worry about them, and I worry mostly about a step down off a curb, a step going down a stairwell that is not controlled, and then a slip, and then a fall, and then the break, and then the immobility, and then the sequence that Attia and others have referred to. Would skipping be a good activity for people in their 60s, 70s, or 80s to undertake carefully as a way to learn eccentric control? Because I'll be honest, I've seen some wonderful, inspiring videos of people in their 70s and 80s jumping off of boxes doing plyo type work in the gym. I don't know many folks in their 70s and 80s who are going to embark on that.
Yeah.
But you can skip kind of small skips, then you can do larger skips. You can skip anywhere. It's free. If you approach it carefully, you probably don't even need a trainer. There's some videos now of you having us skip, and here I'm like inspired to start a skipping movement with you for all these reasons. You don't even need a piece of equipment. You probably even do it barefoot on grass if you couldn't afford shoes, right?
100%.
What are your thoughts on folks who are in the 60 and up club skipping?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think that is so important. That eccentric control or the eccentric capacity is the one that we really lose. The ability to handle ourselves eccentrically is just, we don't do that work anymore. Everything that we do is concentric in nature. And it's not just elite sport. I said before that the differentiator is always in the eccentric force capacities in elite sport. Also in us, in Gen Pop. We lose the ability to apply eccentric force, whether it's fast or maximal. So 100%, I think it's so important. My dad was an elite athlete when he was younger and has probably averaged 4 days a week running for almost his entire life.
Good for him.
Yeah. He's 78. In 2019, he ran the New York City Marathon, ran 5:02. So he's at 74 or 73 years old. And he doesn't do that anymore, but he still runs 4 days a week. And he runs about 20 to 25 miles. And 2 of those days are skipping sessions where he walks 30 seconds, he skips for 30 seconds, and then he strides as fast as he can, as fast as his capacity will allow for 30 seconds. And then he walks, then he skips, and then he strides, and he walks. And it's so key. It really is. Like it's for me, like the ability to express yourself maximally through running. And I've already said I don't feel like most people can do this. I don't know if there is a better single metric as a measurement for whatever word you want to use here, vitality or health, than the ability to safely express maximal speed as you as an individual. Like you choose VO2 max, you choose all of these different things that you might come up with. I don't feel like any of them are as good as the ability to just run maximally. So let's start with that. If we feel like that is important, and you can argue whether it's the most important or the 10th most important, we know it's important. If we know that's important, how do we get there? And as you said, I think skipping is the way. So I'm on board with the skipping movement. Let's get everybody skipping, because it is, as I said, this is your ability to be plyometric, to work on those eccentric force capacities and move in a way in which you can actually express yourself again.